Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. It is great to be back with you with another podcast on Alabama football after an exciting victory on the Plains against the Auburn Tigers. Well, today in the podcast, in the first segment, we're going to review the Auburn game. In the second segment, we're going to talk about our players of the game. In our third and final segment, we're going to look at the upcoming game against the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC Championship game. You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at Tide100.9.com. Well, everyone, welcome back to the DC Capstone Report. I want to thank Lance Shores, who's in the studio making all of these things possible. He does a great job producing this show each and every week. I want to thank RollTideBama.com or FreelancePictures.com, his wonderful websites. You can go out there and check those out, get some great Alabama content, Alabama football content. Another edition of the DC Capstone Report brings us to review in the first segment the game against Auburn, and boy, what a game it was. I hope all of our listeners out there had as good a time at the end of that game as I did as an Alabama fan. It's a heartbreaker for Auburn, but Alabama at the end pulls out the victory. And in that game, it was nothing like I had anticipated, 27-24. But let me talk about the excitement at the end for Alabama. Who would have thought? No one gave us a chance. We had gotten down in the game. According to ESPN analysis, we had a 99.9% chance to lose that game, or Auburn had a 99.9% chance to win that game. There was no way that we should have been in 4th and 31. But you know, things happen crazy on the Plains, and this is twice now where the voodoo at Auburn has come back to haunt them. Once when Bryce Young brought us back on that long touchdown drive to win the game, put it in overtime, then eventually win the game in overtime 2 years ago. And then this game, we're taking a 4th and 31, and they call what we now know the name of the play is Gravedigger play, which sends out all your receivers into the flat. Auburn put a defense in to spy Milroe and to only rush a couple of rushers, and he had all day to throw the ball. Everybody got down the field. He threw it to the right player. First of all, he made the right choice to the right player who was only on single coverage and who was happened to be open. And there was about a 6 to 8 inch window of openness that he had to throw that ball into, and Jalen Milroe made a great throw, probably the best throw of his life, and Isaiah Bond made a great catch. And Alabama ultimately wins the ball game 27-24, breaking the hearts of all the Auburn fans all over the nation. Really exciting win. I don't think anybody gave us a chance, and I think in my heart of hearts, I didn't know if we were going to win that game or not. I knew we had a chance, but it was a slim chance, like everybody else did. But great victory, but a great game to learn from, because I think we can learn from this game. So let me review just a little bit of things I think that happened in this game. There were some good things. I think we did well in the red zone. We did a good job in the red zone. We've always been we started out early in the year a bad red zone team, but we've gotten better, and I think that was good in this game. If you look at our team stats in this game, you'll see that we had 451 total yards to Auburn's 337. We had a 259 passing, 192 rushing, which is a pretty good balance for a 6.6 yard average per play. Now, we gave up a lot of runs to Auburn. They gashed us for some big plays. I got 3 of their plays, got huge numbers. But 244 yards rushing, but they only averaged 5.7 yards per play and 93 yards passing. So overall, not a bad performance. But this game was full of issues. And what I mean by that, it looked like this Alabama team had regressed, had reverted back to the team prior to the Tennessee game. It seemed like since the Tennessee game, we'd increased each and every week with better play. But this game, we reverted back. I don't know what happened. It was a rivalry game. I know anything could happen. But I suspect that there was less attention to detail placed on this game and more looking forward to the SEC Championship game, which we had already locked in. And I told you last week that was a part of a problem that complacency might slip in. And I'm not sure if complacency didn't slip into the coaches, and I know they'd never admit that, but to the coaches and to the players looking a little far ahead to that game against Georgia this week. Now, I don't think Coach Reese called his best game. Great play call at the end, but I don't think he called his best game. I think he was holding back. I think they were trying. I kept saying they're trying to not make mistakes, and pushed him into making more mistakes in this game. But there was a turning point in this game where we reverted back to several things. One was the biggest turning point, I think, in this game was the end around for a touchdown. It was called back. That was a holding penalty on that play. We wiped off 2 touchdowns. We reverted back to that. Penalties that wiped off touchdowns. Our center couldn't get the snap right. The one that everybody notices is that glaring snap at the end where people are now saying that Auburn clapped their hands and may have been doing that all game. I don't know. But the deal was the ball was not even close to the quarterback on that one. It went to his side and rolled back 20 yards. So we reverted back for our center. We reverted back to our penalties. The first punt that Auburn had, we didn't catch it. Again, we revert back to doing things prior to that. And our play calling, it seemed like we were tight in our play calling. And then Jalen Milroe reverted back to his old ways before Tennessee of trying to stay in the pocket too long and not using his legs. There were many times he could have used his legs in this game to extend the plays, extend third down, extend the drives, and he didn't do that. There were several times he could have put his head down and gained a first down, and he didn't do that. And I just felt like he was playing tentative. I'm not sure if he was coached not to get injured, not to run, whatever it was. He was playing like the old Jalen Milroe, not the one we've seen the last few weeks. So there's a lot of things we can look at this game and we can learn from. On defense, I believe the movement that Coach Freeze had in his wide receivers and the patterns that they were running were confusing. Rub routes and the movement pre-snap confused our defense, and we got to learn from that. If they can do it, Georgia will see that film and they'll try to exploit it as well. So there were several times where Auburn had some pass get plays that were open that didn't hit, but that was just an overall learning experience from that. The ugly part of this game, I thought, was the officiating. I thought it was the worst officiated game I'd seen all year for an SEC caliber officials, and it should have never been that way. There were missed calls on both sides of the ball, multiple missed calls against Auburn, multiple missed calls against Alabama. So I don't think anyone can say the officiating cost anybody this game because it was officiating bad, just bad on both sides. So overall, a huge victory by Alabama. It should be a momentum builder going into the Georgia game. But a lot of this game I think we can put beside and flush to the point of how is it going to affect this next game. I don't think that Alabama played their best in this game. But I look back at the Georgia game against Auburn. I don't think Georgia played their best against Auburn. Both of them big rivalry games at Jordan-Hare. And it seemed like that Auburn had the upper hand at least most of the game on both of those games. Alabama wins on the last second, and Georgia wins on the last drive. So I don't think this game can tell you anything about what's going to happen in the next game, except Alabama's got to play better if they expect to beat Georgia next week. Well, welcome back to the DC Capstone Report. Here in the second segment, we're going to take a look at our players of the game. But before we do that, I want to thank our sponsors, RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com. Go out there and check those websites out. Lance has got some great Alabama football content up. And our sponsor that allows us to be with you each and every week, Karen Cottingham Realtor, right here in Tuscaloosa with the Williams Group at Keller Williams. You can contact Karen at 205-887-4008 for all your real estate needs. And if you'd like to take a look at her inventory, you can go online at www.karen.thewilliamsgroupal.com. That's Karen Cottingham, 205-887-4008 for all your real estate needs. Well, back here in the second segment, we're going to take a look at our players of the game. On offense, it should be a no-brainer. Our players of the game were part of the play of the game, and that was that last call, 4th and 31, gravedigger play. It's what people don't understand is this is practice. They thought it was a fluke. No, it's practiced every game, every practice. At the end, last 10 minutes of practice, they practice this play. Some people would call it a Hail Mary jump ball pass, but Alabama doesn't have one of those. They have one of those, but they didn't call it. They call it an actual play that floods the end zone with 4 receivers. Two of those receivers are going to get doubled, and 2 of the receivers are going to have one coverage on them. Single coverage. It's up to the quarterback to determine which receiver to go to first. That's the first read. And the second one is which receivers are single covered, and then which of those 2 receivers is open the most. And this time, Jalen Milroe chose Isaiah Bond. So those are my offensive players of the game. Jalen Milroe didn't have his best game, but when it mattered, he rose to the occasion. He did have 16 of 24 attempts passing for 259 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 18 carries for 107 yards, and there were many more yards that he could have gotten on the field should he have chosen to do so. So this could have been a monster game for Jalen Milroe if he'd have run the ball. It's possible he could have put up 400 yards himself, but did a great job. He did an awesome job in that last play, keeping his poise about him, reading the play, and hitting the right receiver. And that right receiver is our second player of the game in offense, and that is Isaiah Bond. He had a good game all day. He had 5 receptions for 75 yards and a touchdown. He got in good position. He played out of the backfield. He played out of the slot, played out of the wide out. Just thought he did a really good job all around. So our 2 offensive players of the game were Jalen Milroe and Isaiah Bond. On defense, I have to give it to the bookends. This game showed quarterback pressures that kept the passing game in check. And that has to go with Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. Dallas Turner played a great game in this game. I thought he did really well in pass coverage, in sacking, and in run defense. He actually ran down from behind one of the fastest players on Auburn's team to save a touchdown. So he did a good job in this game. Chris Braswell did as well. Both of them had sacks in this game, and both of them pressured the quarterback. So in summary, my offensive players of the game are Jalen Milroe and Isaiah Bond on offense, and Chris Braswell and Dallas Turner on defense. Well, welcome back to the DC Capstone Report. Here in our third and final segment, we're going to preview the game against the Georgia Bulldogs. Well, it's a game for the championship. Alabama's undefeated in the SEC. Georgia's undefeated in the SEC. Alabama goes in at 11-1. Georgia in at 12-0. No, Georgia hadn't lost a ball game in 3 years. I think Georgia's going to be a favorite, at least in this game, by 4 or 5 points. So what does Alabama have to do to win this ball game? Well, let's start by saying this. Overall, big picture. We drop back and look at this game. Alabama has to play a complete game like they have done before, post-Tennessee. We can't revert to the same mistakes or the same play that we did in the Auburn game. We got to flush that game, and we got to go back to improving each week. So we've got to do that. So we got to look at the big picture is Alabama can't revert anymore. We have to play solid, good game like we had been playing prior to the Auburn game. So what does that mean? Well, on defense, number one thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to stop the run. We're going to have to stop the run on defense. Georgia loves to run the ball, and we got to stop that run. And the second thing we have to do if we stop the run is to pressure the quarterback in quarterback passing situations. Carson Beck is a great quarterback, will do a good job, and he can pick this Alabama defense apart if we give him enough time. So I think it's so important to put enough pressure on him, and that's up to Kevin Steele to decide. Can we do it with our linemen and our outside rushers, or do we need to add a safety or a linebacker in the mix? And so I'll look to see more blitzes in this game, more chances, and giving him less time to throw the ball. If you give him time to throw the ball, he's got some great offensive weapons that can get open on our backfield and our secondary, and they can pick us apart in the passing game. So we're going to have to rush the quarterback in this. And then finally on defense, you got to get off the field on third downs. We got to create some turnovers, or we got to get off the field on third downs. We can't let Georgia stay on offense and use their offensive weapons against us. We got to ball control, keep the ball on our side, and we do that first by stopping them and getting the ball back. So on defense, look for this game to be a slugfest. Both of them have great defensive teams, and I look for Georgia to have the same kind of defensive mindset against Alabama in this game. So we've got to do a good job on defense to set the tone in this game. I think Alabama has an opportunity to do that and really get the momentum, seize the momentum by getting some stops early in this game and getting off the field on third down. On offense, I think we got to have an overall best offensive game plan that we've had against Georgia and to win this game. I think we got to be on our best. So that means, number one, we can't make any mistakes. That means no penalties, taking TDs off the board. We can't handle that in this game. No turnovers, no fumbles, no interceptions. We got to play mistake-free football. No penalties, no turnovers, no interceptions. Our center has got to get the exchange better on the snaps. We've got to get that under control. We can't have bad snaps in this game that affect the quarterback like they did in the last game. So we've got to have a better game plan coming in of concentration, being on point in what we're doing. And then secondly, we've got to run the ball to set up the pass. I believe Reese has to call the best game he's called all year. And what I mean by that, he needs to come out of his bag, open up, loosen up a little bit, and call some plays that's going to get Jalen Milroe in the best position to make plays, as well as our offensive backfield. Looks like Jace McClellan is a little banged up in this game. We may see more of Roydell Williams and Jamarian Miller, and maybe see a little more Justice Haynes in this game if Jace McClellan is unable to play. He's been nicked up in a foot injury all year. You heard it again against Auburn, so we got to look for that. But our running backs, our offensive line is going to have to beat their defensive line, open up holes for our running backs. We've got to run the ball. And in so doing, we've got to have Jalen Milroe a part of that running. He is going to have design runs, pull and read runs, run pass options where he runs, and there's got to be some times where he's going to have to just break down and run the ball and make some plays with his legs. So he can't be afraid to run the ball and get first downs and extend plays. He's going to have to run the ball in this game to extend plays with his legs. So we've got to do that. And by running the ball well early in this game, we'll set up some play action passes. I really do think that Georgia is open for some play action passes down the middle to our wide receivers or our slot receivers, and a big mismatch at our tight end on their linebackers. I really think that we got some opportunities to make some plays in the passing game, some big explosive plays. And if we run the ball and set that play action passing, I'm sure that we can do that. Overall, we're going to have to play the best game that we've played all year to beat Georgia. Let's be honest, we've not played a team as good as Georgia. Georgia is a great team. Georgia's undefeated and hadn't lost a game in 3 years. And I believe that this is going to be a monumental task for Alabama. But I don't think it's as bleak as 4th and 31 was against Auburn. In other words, I think we have a greater than 99.1% chance to beat Georgia in this game going in. So we have already overcome a monumental task in coming back from a death situation to be revived with that long pass against against Auburn. So we can do this. We can really win this game if they use that as motivation to flush the Auburn game, but realize and take the one thing from it is that you won the game and moved on. And if they take that, if they don't sleepwalk into this game, if they come in with the momentum of, hey, we faced the hardest test, a 4th and 31 play, use that to their advantage in the flush it the very first meeting, and say, okay, we got to play our best game against Georgia. We can do that. It's not as hard as everybody says. In other words, they're not. It's not very oftentimes that we go into the game as a big underdog, but I think that we're going to be a big underdog. I don't think anybody in America except Bama fans are going to want Alabama to beat Georgia because they don't want to mess up the playoff picture for the SEC or for anyone else. So we're going to be a big underdog. So that lank that everybody's talking about, let all naysayers know, needs to be the mantra going into this Georgia game. And we've got to make sure that we play our best. I believe momentum is going to be the key to this game. So we've got to make sure that we keep the momentum. You do that by starting fast, not being complacent, and not making mistakes. If we can do that in this game, then I believe we have a chance to win this game, win the SEC championship, and then leave it all in the hands of the playoff committee. Will they keep a one-loss SEC champion out of the playoffs? Well, that remains to be seen. Well, I think this game plays out just like most Alabama-Georgia games. It's all tight all the way down the stretch. But I believe in the end, Alabama finds a way, and they win this game. Alabama 31, Georgia 28. Well, that's it here for the podcast on Alabama football for the DC Capstone Report. I want to thank Lance as well, my sponsors, RollTideBama.com, FreelancePictures.com, and Karen Cottingham Realtor right here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Again, picking Alabama to beat Georgia in the SEC Championship, 31-28. And everyone's asked me, everybody's tweeted, everybody said, hey, what did you call that game against Auburn? Well, one last thing. I think Nightmare and Jordan Hare is a good one. I think 00 over is a good name for it. But the best thing I can say for that is let's flush that game and let's take the momentum into the Georgia game and let's beat Georgia for the SEC Championship. Well, that's it all this week for the DC Capstone Report. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to being back here next week as we review the SEC Championship game. Y'all have a great week and roll tide.